People were not happy yesterday, or at least a lot of them weren't, and it was very familiar with the sentiment of years past. Phoenix has never been a track that has really attracted that many hardcore racing fans because they absolutely love the racing itself, and that has been especially the case since the most recent facelift to the track has been done. And to me, I would honestly give this race probably a 4 out of 10. And it was a little bit better, I'd say, than the last spring race at Phoenix in 2023, but it was still probably a below average race. Not a barn burner, it wasn't necessarily awful per se, but it wasn't good either. And I think that's where a lot of fans really sat with it. Now, of course, you go on Twitter, you're going to see the overreaction theater, and then from there, you're just going to probably go into a downward spiral. But to me, over the years, I've kind of put this track in a bin with Richmond and New Hampshire. See, these tracks don't necessarily have the greatest racing, especially with the next-gen car, but they do have strategy at times, and you can see people pass if they have a really good car. Sound familiar? Yeah, that's kind of where I put it all. But the thing for many that puts it over the edge is that it's the finale. And it's why, for a lot of people, it's the number one reason why this track is so disappointing. Look what we had before. Homestead. From 2003 to 2019, the Homestead Miami Speedway defined the finale in NASCAR. And many people probably at the time were not very happy with the fact that it was replacing Atlanta as the finale. Yet, it became the finale track for generations. Millennials and Gen Z, if you ask them about their favorite finale moments, pretty much always bring up Homestead. Most of these huge, spectacular finales that we think of are Homestead ones. It offered spectacular racing. As the track got older and older, it would have more and more lanes, going from maybe a single or 2-lane track to one where you could be at the bottom at the start of a run and then completely rim riding by the end of the run. And these history-defining moments, like Jimmy Johnson's 7 championships, like seeing Kevin Harvick win over Ryan Newman, Kyle Busch's championship win, among so many others over the years. You saw these at the Homestead Miami Speedway, and it was in large part because of how good the track was. You were able to have these moments play out because anyone could make their way up through if they had a really good car, and usually the best of the best won. And then look at Phoenix. It's constantly been being changed since 2011. It's hated, or at least tolerated, by a lot of drivers. Even Jamie McMurray at one point had said that since 1989, there's never been a good race at Phoenix. And you also have a lot of people who just are not really a fan of shorter, not short track, but shorter flat track racing. And it's really never had great racing in its history, kind of like I said. It's kind of already had that reputation built up. So when you change to the Homestead Miami Speedway and then go over to Phoenix, well, it's not going to have the response that many want it to have. At least with Homestead, it was pretty much a brand new racetrack when they changed it, and it didn't have really any expectations when you look back, because the track it was in 2002 was a far, long cry away from what it was in 2003. Phoenix, yeah, they changed it, but it wasn't really that different. Now, some will say that we fans just can never be happy. That's why we didn't like this race. That the racing is good and fans just never are going to be happy, which I'll admit is true. But I don't think that's really the case with Phoenix among other tracks. I think this is one of the 2 to 3, maybe 4 tracks where fans not being happy most of the time with it is actually kind of justified. And there was a tweet I saw, and I will admit that it kind of put me up the wall at first because I think it completely misrepresents what fans are thinking. And it's from Pete Pistone. He says that, quote, NASCAR has moved into the impossibly untenable world where if it's not 3 wide for 3 hours, the race is deemed a failure, Unless, of course, it's a super speedway, then nobody likes that either. And I think that tweets like this do not help the discourse in any way. All it does is more favor a smaller crowd, while the majority of people then have even more distrust for those in NASCAR media for being disingenuous in their eyes. I would say that fans want the type of short or shorter track racing we got with the COT and the majority of the Gen 6 era. Look back at those races. They were not 3 wide for the most part like a Martinsville race wasn't. But people look forward to those races because they knew it would be good. Plus, fans loved Atlanta. Yeah, I get it was a 3 wide finish, but you know, it was a super speedway now and they loved it. And they really like Las Vegas, which for the majority of the race wasn't 3 wide either. I think that those in NASCAR media and in general can have an honest conversation without misrepresenting who they're talking against. The reason to me fans are so critical and why they're so disappointed is because this track settles the title. We as fans generally want a track that, at least in our eyes, can offer better racing, which I think Homestead can, as well as honestly pretty much every track on the schedule, and is also fair to teams as much as it can be in offering different lanes and more opportunities to get through the pack and compete for the title as well. Yeah, I get that some good cars could pass. Christopher Bell could pass, and others could pass as well, like Ryan Blaney late in a run. But when you have cars that were like Kyle Larson's or Chase Elliott's, ran top 5 for most of the day, and they couldn't get into the top 10, or some of them couldn't get into the top 18 because of lap traffic with tires that were way more worn than the others that they had, well, that's a problem. And I think that any genuine racing fan and any honest person can say it's not a good deal. And I think NASCAR would say that too. But to me, I will say all of this does frustrate me, but what frustrates me about Phoenix is this track should be a total hit. Now, it won't sound like that immediately after what I've just said, but just hear me out. The area supports NASCAR. The city promotes it like a top-tier level sporting league, both at the airport, around the city, and promotes it on TV. It sold out the race this past spring, and it will definitely sell out the finale in November, and it would sell it out even if it wasn't the finale. The fans and the area are there for NASCAR. The facility, top-notch. Nobody I have ever talked to that has went to Phoenix has ever had a bad thing to say about it, and usually has great things to say about how modern it is, how up-to-date everything is, how it feels like going to a 21st century facility, unlike a lot of racetracks nowadays. And it really is kind of renovated the way Daytona was. It is an ISC track after all. Basically, aside from the racing, this is a perfect track for NASCAR. It's in a bigger area that supports racing, has a huge diehard fan base for racing, but the racing itself does not live up to that fan base or that great facility. And it's so frustrating to me, because if they were able to fix the racing at Phoenix, just make it a little bit better, or just make it maybe the way New Hampshire was in the COT era, I think this track would be one of the favorites for NASCAR fans. But unfortunately, that's just not the case right now. So with that, I want to pass this all on to you. What are your opinions of the Phoenix Raceway? Do you think it should have the finale, or do you think that NASCAR needs to move on from it at this point? Let me know down in the comments below. While you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to this channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to all my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.